I went to the 2025 NEC Classic Car Show and found you the most weird and wonderful cars with the best backstories. We've got 2 homemade cars the manufacturers really should have put into production but didn't, 2 different small cars you've probably never heard of that went endurance racing and were right up there with the mighty Porsche works teams, a gothic fantasy London taxi, the car that invented the front air dam, and a Lancia in a plastic bag. Let's go.
This looks from the front like an early Mark I Ford Cortina, and it sort of is, but actually there's a lot more to the story. It's a recreation of this 1962 Ford Saxon Cortina prototype that was intended for the US market but never went into production. This replica was hand-built by serial Cortina fettler Colin Ginn several years ago based on that one surviving photograph of the original. This recreation has won lots of prizes and it's fairly well known at shows, but I've never seen it in the metal and it's just stunning. The removable hardtop roof is bespoke using Triumph Stag fixings, it's been shortened, the doors are lower, the tailboard is different, even the wheels are handmade from Focus Spacesavers and Beetle rims with hubcaps from a Hillman Minx. Not only that, Colin built it in just 1 year, working only on Saturdays. If you're restoring a car yourself like I am, that is equal parts astonishing, inspiring and frankly embarrassing. But mostly it's astonishing. There's a whole thread about it on the Buy Sell Cortina website, so I'll put a link to that in the description. It's an absolutely gorgeous little thing and a real delight to see. Still in the world of Ford's haul, this car on the Taunus Club stand is a lot more rare and interesting than you might think at first glance. For a start, it's not badged as a Taunus at all, it's a 20M, the P7 generation, and they only made these for a year between the middle of 1967 and 1968, before they substantially restyled it to remove that kink out of the rear haunches and to add a bit more sculpting to the bonnet and grille. That's got to be some kind of a record for a substantial sheet metal facelift. It's the 20M with the 2-litre version of the Cologne V6, and for extra rarity points it's the 5-door Tournier Estate version, and it's rather lovely. You get a 2-for-1 deal on celebrity provenance with this one. This is a 1939 Mercury 8. It's the first right-hand drive one imported to the UK, which was ordered by Sir Malcolm Campbell as a tender and mobile camp bed for his successful speed record runs on Coniston Water in the summer of 1939. Hence its coach-built conversion to this estate car body style. In 1942, George Formby tapped up Sir Malcolm Campbell for a car for his tour entertaining the troops in Italy, the Med and North Africa. So the Mercury was sent to Remy for converting to the military desert spec you see here, and did 25,000 miles in the late summer and autumn of 1943. So to recap, you've got a factory right-hand drive American car with a one-off coach-built body, a UK first, some world speed record provenance and military service, and a Knight of the Realm and a chart-topping film star, all in one vehicle. So it's great to see that somebody's been cleaning windows and it's turned out nice again. Who writes this stuff? This fantastic contraption is Moby 1. It's a special built for auto testing in 1969, and its name is a contraction of Maurice Bishop, its creator, who invented the four-wheel steering setup on this car and took back-to-back championships in 1969 and 1970. It's based on ADO 16 1100 mechanicals with a 1275cc Mini Cooper S engine supplied by Downton, at the behest of none other than Sir Alec Isigonis, somewhat to Morris's surprise, after writing him a speculative letter trying to blag one. It has 2.5 steering racks, one steering the front wheels in the usual way, then a half rack that rotates a 4.5 shaft, and a third that controls the rear wheels. This completely changed the game for auto testing, and it's been much copied since. Moby 1 was thought lost since somewhere in the mid-1980s, but it turned up in a barn in 2019, and so here it is at the show. Fantastic. One of the most interesting cars in the show was actually hidden inside this stand advertising indoor car tents. It's a Lancia Prisma four-wheel drive. They only made these for a year between the middle of 1986 and 1987 before it was replaced by the equally slow-selling Prisma Integrale. It's a four-wheel drive with a different system from its sister car, the Delta HF and Integrale. It's set up not for rallying success, but for safety and stability, so perfect for those notorious long cold Italian winters. It was actually for sale for a not outrageous £12,000 sticker price, given that it looks in pretty good condition, but it's hard to tell inside this tent, and indeed pretty much everybody walked past it, apart from the two people in the shot here, and me. Oh, and Joseph Lloyd, who doesn't walk past anything. How's this for a radical transformation? You might recognise this from YouTube as the 60s truck from Paul Bacon's Custom Works channel, of which I'm a big fan, and I'll put a link in the description. It's his custom bike transporter, called the 60s truck, but I see it's now been renamed Kinky Voodoo. And somewhere underneath the wonderful Gothic Deco exterior is an FX4 London taxi, believe it or not. But the imagination and the craftsmanship are just jaw-dropping, and the quality of the finish is every bit as good close-up as it is on YouTube. It's full of superb funky details like the cathode ray instruments and the infinity headlamp and, well, all of it really, and I absolutely love it. Stunning and great to see this in person. Even just the light show alone draws a crowd. Definitely go and have a look at Paul's channel and see more about this. It's well worth it. Sadly, Paul was never around when I swung by the stand, so I didn't get to meet him, but maybe I will one day. And just to shake his hand and say this is something else. Pure genius. This cute little coupe is very rare and very special. It's a 1971 Mazda R100, which means it's the first Mazda rotary engine car imported into the UK, one of only 6 sold here. It's based on the Mazda 1200, but with the same Wankel rotary engine as the Cosmo, putting out well over 120 bhp per tonne. Good for 0 to 60 in about 8.5 seconds, so that's Mark 1 or 2 Golf GTI performance in 1968. They raced these in touring cars, and at the Spa 24 Hours in 1969, the only thing that beat the Mazda R100s was the factory Porsche 911s. I had a great chat with the owner, who spent 12 years restoring it to this lovely original condition, including having a nasty aftermarket Webasto type sunroof replaced with a correct steel roof by a specialist who normally restores top-end Porsches. He told me the story of how when it had been painted, the restorer said it just needed machine polishing, and he said, no, don't do that, because it wouldn't have had that from the factory, and he wanted it to look as original as possible. And I really love that. When I was about 10 years old, the only pictures I ever saw of an AC 3000ME were so blurry and indistinct that it took on a kind of mythical status, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. So actually seeing this one up close, and even sitting in it, thanks to its generous owner, was pretty much a life-changing experience. I know these aren't supposed to be the fastest or most refined things ever, but it was really nicely finished, and it's a stunning design. Some of the fittings come from Triumph Dolomite and the like, but there's nothing wrong with that. They're well integrated, and it doesn't have the feel of a kit car or a parts bin special at all. They're built around a strong central tub with a space frame subframe bolted on fore and aft, a bit like a Lotus Elise, although in steel rather than aluminium. And the engine is the only transverse application of Ford's Essex 3-litre V6 engine, which is mounted amidships and drives the back wheels through AC's own gearbox. The owner also has a Type 75 Lotus Elite, as do I, although I bet his is a bit tidier than mine is, and I think that will be a fascinating comparison. The power figures are quite similar, and the AC is heavier but wins on torque, at least against the Series 1 Elite like mine. He reckoned, and I can well believe it, that the Elite feels a bit lighter, sharper. But I mean, what a choice. I love these. I mean, they look stunning, and they're a really clever design. The boot's huge. I know that's not supposed to be the first thing to worry about in a sports car, but yeah. Look at this, there are 6 little silencers under there. But the exhaust system is so short, I bet it still makes a fantastic noise. There are about 100 odd made, so they're pretty rare, but the survival rate isn't too bad, and they do come up for sale from time to time. In fact, there have been a few on the usual classic car places in the last few months. Not that I've been looking or anything, you understand? Not at all. Big Boy did it and ran away. Something else you might not know about the AC3000ME is that the prototype for it was the Bohanna Stables Diablo, which looked pretty similar to the finished car, but which was originally conceived as an upmarket successor to the Unipower GT. And if you don't know what a Unipower GT is, then here are 3 of them. And they've got a really interesting story too. I confess I didn't know a huge amount about them, but I was lucky to have a good chat with Jerry Hulford, who owns and indeed races this one, and who literally wrote the book on them. The Unipower GT is a small British sports car, of which 73 were made in 2 different factories in West London between 1966 and 1969. It was designed as a road-going sports car, but a few of them actually went racing as well, starting with the very first chassis built and the second customer order, which seems to have slightly caught the makers off guard. They have a strong space frame chassis and a lightweight fiberglass body that carries a mid-mounted Mini Cooper S engine and weigh almost nothing, so are very quick. This is that actual first chassis built, and it and some of its sister cars have a long and illustrious history of racing success. One of them even qualified, I think, 4th in class at the Targa Florio in 1969, ahead of the Works Porsche 911s, but ended up not racing because it got crashed heavily in a shakedown run between qualifying and the race. Blokes in pubs will tell you that the Lamborghini Miura was the first performance road car to have a rear mid-mounted engine driving the rear wheels, as will Wikipedia, citing Clarkson-era Top Gear of all the reliable sources. But actually, the Unipower GT was developed in parallel with the Miura and made its public debut almost 2 full months earlier, in January of 1966, when the Miura wasn't launched until the Geneva show in March. Not only that, what you're looking at here is probably the world's first front air dam. Discovered more or less by accident when Valdair Bryan, the Unipower chassis designer, was experimenting in the Myra wind tunnel with bits of cardboard to try and reduce lift. Other people had been experimenting with bits of winglets and things, but this was the first application of a full-width front air dam. And the Unipower team found that not only did it reduce lift, but it also reduced drag. So they fitted it to the racing cars, and it quickly caught on. I don't generally talk very much about pre-war cars, but this really caught my eye. It's a 1932 Wolseley Hornet Special Coupe, and it's not an original coach-built special. It was home-built recently by its owner to his own design. It was created from a derelict barn find chassis and a rotten body, and it was inspired by original 1930s open top Hornet conversions by Swallow, which had a sort of characteristic pert bottom, which he's carried over up into the roof in this coach built coupe style. These are lovely little cars. They've got a tiny straight 6 engine, varying from 1.3 up to 1.6 displacement. Twin SU carbs for the special, and driven by an overhead camshaft, unusually. Here it seems to be driven by a cam belt, although I think it was more usually a chain. I don't know much more than that about it, but it's absolutely lovely. Beautifully finished, beautifully made, and a real credit to both his craftsmanship and imagination. Look great in this Wedgwood blue and cream colour scheme as well. Fantastic. This Matra Rancho is pretty odd because it's the découvrable version with those fabric sides. There was a bit of a theme for me at the show of interesting orange cars, so much so that I'm planning to make a second video on a quest that I got into to find the orangest car there. So I'm going to talk more about this in that video. When I've finished editing it, I'll post up a link. There's nothing too unusual about seeing a Morris Marina at a show, but this is an Austin Marina. Except it isn't a Marina at all, it's an Austin 700-weight van, as the commercial versions didn't use the Marina name, but you could choose either an Austin or a Morris badge on the same van on these early ones. And it's in deluxe spec, which you can tell because it has luxuries like a passenger seat. A special mention also to this immaculate Mumford Marina convertible. The window arrangement on these always reminds me of an allotment shed, but that's probably very unfair of me because it was in immaculate condition. It's very smart. Bless it. I had a model kit of one of these as a small boy, but I've never seen one in the actual metal. It's a Pink Panther, a 1968 Land Rover, adapted for use in the deserts in the Middle East and North Africa by the SAS. Fully equipped with tools, a 100-gallon fuel tank, grenade launchers, a machine gun emplacement and anti-tank weaponry, it weighs around 3 tons, which is about the same as all the modern long-wheelbase Range Rovers in the NEC car park. The distinctive colour was rated as the best for desert camouflage, especially at dawn and dusk, plus presumably the SAS aren't too worried about anyone laughing at them in a pink car. They were supplied in green and then converted by Marshals of Cambridge, who are very much still a thing. You can still see some of the green paint underneath the pink on this well-used one. 78 were built and there's thought to be about 20 left. They're clearly very distinctive and, I mean, iconic is a massively overused word, but probably not inappropriate in this case. So it's a rare treat to see one, and especially interesting to see one wearing its history like this. Speaking of Panthers, the Panther Car Club had brought along this, the unfinished Panther J99 concept that founder Robert Yankel was working on when he died. It has the transverse 32-valve 4.6-litre V8 from a Lincoln Continental, mounted amidships with a supercharger added on for extra oomph, and it's fascinating to speculate what the finished car would have looked like, based on this striking skeletal aluminium bodywork with its gull-wing doors. But sadly we'll never know because there weren't any drawings known. The design was all in Robert Yankel's circus mind running wild, along with butterflies and zebras and moonbeams, and little wings for riding with the wind. It's quite a big wing, actually. There's some parallels with the Lotus 340R, which was being designed around the same time, about the turn of the century, but of course this is a size or two bigger and a lot more powerful, and perhaps even more extraordinary. A mid-engine prototype that ultimately did make it into production is this little sweetie, the MG PR3. It's the prototype that led to the MGF after a fair amount of restyling by Steve Harper. It's quite little. You can see some of its Metro origins. It's got a Metro dashboard, for example, and it also has a 1.4 K-series engine, albeit mounted in the middle instead of in the front. There's an echo of the MG EXE prototype in these lights in the front bumper as well. Both the EXE and this PR3 are now safely in the custody of the British Motor Museum at Gaydon. There was a good deal of uncertainty about the future of the PR3 and some other prototypes at Longbridge under its new Chinese owners. But Gaydon now has custody of them, and so it's well worth a visit if you're interested in this sort of thing. And if you aren't, then you're probably watching the wrong video. But stick with us anyway. It's not every day you see a Morgan you don't recognise, but this was a new one on me. It's a Plus 4 Plus from 1964. It was an attempt by Peter Morgan to modernise the design, so it's got this slightly oddball bell-shaped coupe roof arrangement, and this more integrated body style that's dragging Morgan into, what, the 1950s? In 1964. It's a remarkable thing. Not sure it's exactly beautiful, but it's It's remarkable and very rare. Only 26 were made, it didn't really catch on, and there's 6 left in the UK, of which this is one. And very delightful it is too. There's a joke to be had here about a lovely pair of Bristols, but I'm not going to be that guy. The green one is a Bristol 450, a Le Mans racer from 1953 that draws on the company's experience as an aircraft manufacturer with its streamlined body and these 2 vertical wings for high-speed stability. It had Bristol's own 2-litre straight-six engine in a chassis derived from an earlier ERA Formula 2 design. They built either 3 or 4 cars depending on who you ask, and they took first, second and third place in the 2-litre class at Le Mans in 1954 and again in 1955. Although they weren't directly involved, after the disaster at the 1955 Le Mans race, Bristol quietly donated their prize money to the relief fund for the victims and withdrew from racing. All the 450s were broken up, except one, which was restored in the 1990s and is the car you see here. This beast is a De Tomaso Garra, the last car that was built by Alejandro De Tomaso. It's a fairly late one, from 1998 or so, which you can tell because it's got a Ford V8 engine rather than the BMW unit of the earlier cars. They made about 50 of them in total, and it looks like a 3-way cross between a Bugatti EB110, an M100 Lotus Elan, and the Battlestar Galactica. That's about all I know about them, but it's an extraordinary looking thing. As usual at these shows, there was no shortage of sporting Fords, but this one is a real rarity. Check out this pair of oil coolers on the tailgate. Now that's hardcore. It's a Ford Escort RS 1700T, and it's a rear-wheel drive rally prototype, of which 18 were built and about 6 are thought to survive. It's been refurbished, but not over-restored, and it looks magnificent. And just like it's about to go out on a rally with its 350 brake horsepower engine. That never really did happen with the Works team, because by the time they developed it, it became clear that 4-wheel drive was going to be the way to go, and so they were replaced by this, the RS200. They made over 200 of these for homologation, and then the rally cars on top, so these are common as muck, relatively speaking. I must admit I thought the P1800 was Volvo's first sports car, but as in so many things, I was wrong. It was actually this, the P1900 of 1956. Inspired by the Corvette C1 of 1953, like this lovely example also at the show in the next hall, it was designed with a fiberglass body on a tubular steel chassis, with the engine from Volvo's PV444 saloon. The Volvo, I mean, not the Corvette, obviously. Glasspar, the fiberglass boat builder that made the bodies, did warn that the chassis lacked rigidity, and they only made 68 of them before the new president of Volvo took one for a spin and immediately cancelled the rest of production. It's a really pretty looking car though, at least from the back and the side. From the front it looks a bit like one of those baskets you use to take the cat to the vet. But the interior is lovely, and on this channel we do love finding heroic surviving examples of commercial disasters and design cul-de-sacs. Tucked away in a corner of the dealer hall amongst a load of modern stuff was this extraordinary piece of craftsmanship. It's a 1926 Packard chassis with a handmade wooden body built about 10 years ago by Steve Mills, who is a boat restorer, and he used boat techniques of copper riveting mahogany veneer on an oak frame to create this custom body, and it's absolutely stunning. I mean, it's beautiful in its overall shape, but it's also beautiful in its fine detailing, using traditional boat building techniques that would have been appropriate to the period of when the chassis was new. It was a derelict and fire-damaged car that he had shipped over from the US to base the work on, and it's just amazing. That's all I know about it. There are a few photos on a website called Pre-War Car, which don't really provide a great deal more information than that, but it's absolutely amazing. Last for now, but certainly not least, is one of my absolute favourite cars in the show, and that's this Rover P5 Estate. It's not a factory prototype, but you could easily be forgiven for thinking it was, because the design and finish looks so completely right. In fact, it was built by a bloke called Graham in his shed from a rusty P5 saloon, plus the roof and tailgate from a scrap Mercedes S124 Estate. I say the roof of the Mercedes, but actually he made up the cant rails and the D-pillars by hand, by bending some sheet steel and cutting slots into it and welding them up again to make the curved shape. He's got a photo book that details all the work, and it's an amazing achievement. Both the design and the execution are absolutely fantastic. He even scratch-built a folding seat mechanism that means that the seat back folds down and forms a flat surface with the floor. And one of my favourite finishing touches is that because he didn't want to cut a hole in the rear wing, he's hidden the fuel filler cap behind one of the rear tail lights, like a 1950s American car.
That's very cool.
It's no show queen either. He uses it as estate cars are intended, for transporting his 2 dogs and towing a vintage caravan. It was a real pleasure to meet him, see the car up close and hear the story. And that's the essence of this show for me. Of course it is about the cars, but it's also about meeting the owners and having those conversations and hearing about the restoration or the backstory and all those just human stories that bring it all alive. I've just scratched the surface here really, but if you want more oddball car stories, then I'll put another video here that I think you'll like as well.